Hi, this is Brian Denzer. I'm the data manager for the Hurricane Isaac Disaster Case Management Program here in Louisiana. And what we'd like to offer you today is a little more advanced training on how to use the Coordinated Assistance Network Export Wizard tool to extract client data from your uh, client database in CAN. So we're at can.org and you have signed in. You'll want to go to My Tools, choose your region, click on the Client Export link under Client Management, click the Client Registry Export Wizard, and by the way, you may want to just grab that URL in the browser window and save that as a bookmark. It's a much faster way to get to this page. Here we have entered the Client Export Wizard. I've shown this in an introductory tutorial, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. There are 5 pages we're going to go through to get through the wizard in its entirety. Let's imagine that you're interested in client tier levels, how many clients you have at tier levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 within your agency. Well, let's go ahead and do that. First of all, let's give this export template a name. We'll call this tutorial tier levels. I'm going to save the export and continue. We're now in step 2 of 5, and we want to select some criteria. Now, I almost always select the same criteria. You're probably interested in agency ID. If you're interested in agency ID, you're interested in the agency name. Client ID, very important. Associated disasters, I almost always click that. Let's scroll down. We're now cruising into the intake portion of CAN, where all of these fields are exposed to us. And I'm just sort of browsing. I have actually a list in front of me, but for your benefit, I'm just sort of browsing through the fields that are available so that you can see what is exposed to you. Note that each CAN tab is available to you within a self-contained frame. So all the intake information is in this frame here. And we're cruising down. We're actually looking for the priority levels, but I want to see if there's other useful information. Here's the priority levels. We're going to click that, so we want that. I'm not really going to click any of the disaster-related needs. I'm not interested in that. I'm often interested in the case status. I often want to know if the case is open. The case manager agency ID. Let's cruise back up here. Just because I'm always double checking myself. See here, it's client agency name. I think they're the same, but as a matter of fact, I'm always thinking through this process when I'm clicking these checkboxes, and it is a very good idea to be thinking that way. So here I see that I really do want case manager agency ID. I'm going to leave the other one there. Case manager agency name, case manager ID number. I often want to know specifically who that case manager is. And I'm not going to choose first name, last name here, but I often do want to know that case manager's name. But just for the benefit of their privacy in this tutorial, I'll leave them out. I'm almost always interested in the date of intake. In fact, for the Hurricane Isaac DCMP, we really do want a very specific date of intake for clients to be considered eligible for the program. So I'm interested in that. I'm often interested in the case was closed. That's just one other indicator that the case is open or closed. And I often want to know that the release was signed. It should be signed. I can't imagine a case in which, as a business process, a release has not been signed, a release for information. But clicking that checkbox is just one more way to validate the client record. And that's pretty much all I want. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I could choose, but I'm not interested in most of these things. When we get to the bottom, though, I'll show you I am interested in one thing. In this case, closure. And it might be interesting to inspect whether or not a case was closed. It should not be an open case above in client intake and down here closed. Those things should be in harmony. But I'm not interested in that today. What I am interested in is this, right down here, household relation, all the way down at the bottom of this page. It's often important to know that you're counting the head of household, not other family members. You're counting individual households. So that's an important one, and I often click that. Sometimes I also click the household relationship, which should, in this case, be head of household. So that's all we need really, I think, for this tutorial to get the priority levels. And so, you might want to double check what you've selected, but this is going to work for us. It's a long list of things, and you'll go blind going back and forth trying to inspect these things, which is why it's useful to know that you can save your templates. I'm just cruising through here again to make sure that I checked the tier level, and I can't find it. It's such a long list. So sometimes when I'm looking for something, I'll pull up the search tool in the browser, and I will search for the field I'm looking for, and there it is. So I did check that. So we're in good shape. So I'll click Next Step to go to the next page. And as I've said before, I really don't often sort records here because I like to post-process them. But just know that you can sort records or sort the column order, the field order of the records. And just to show you that there are two Next Step buttons, I'll click the one down here on the bottom. We go to step 4 of 5 in the Client Export Wizard. Here we're given an opportunity to sort the records in particular fields. It might be interesting to, or it might be useful to sort records by client ID, for example. Click Next Step. Oh, so I've created an error. So this is interesting, and it's good. I'm going so fast through this, I'm not really paying attention. I wonder what I've done wrong. So I'll try to backtrack. Just clicking the back arrow a couple of times until I get back here. And so I'll want to double check. This is not a bad thing to happen. It just shows you that sometimes this is kind of a clunky tool. Clever, a very clever tool, but sometimes leaves questions about what it's trying to do, or what it's trying to tell you in this case. So this is where I checked all of the checkboxes. We're on step 2 of 5 here. If you're still with me, hopefully this isn't too confusing. We're going to go to the next step. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, this all looks good. Next step. Okay, so this time I didn't get an error, which is interesting. I'm wondering why. And it's interesting too that client ID is pre-selected for me. So I'm kind of wondering, I just finished an introductory tutorial. I'm wondering if CAN now is trying to retain some previous selections or something like that. I just don't know. Just be aware that weird things may happen, and so you've really got to think very carefully through this process at times. Make sure you know what you're doing. As I noted in the introductory tutorial, and you'll see if you take one of the CAN tutorials, one of the official CAN tutorials, you have to use a minimum of 3 criteria. And I almost always use the same criteria. So for example, I'm really only interested in associated disasters equals LA Hurricane Isaac. So I'm going to click the L key a bunch of times until I get what I'm looking for, rather than, go through this great big long list. So that's one criteria. We're going to leave this AND logical connector, almost always leave it as AND. There's very few reasons why you'd want to change that until you're looking for really advanced filter criteria. Case manager agency ID, well, in this case I'm actually going to show you that I can get one agency ID, but in fact what I often do is leave this as a wide open query where I want to get all of the case manager agency IDs. So I use greater than or equal to 0. In this case, we're going to say equals. I'm going to choose the Hurricane Isaac Disaster Case Management Program ID for Catholic Charities of New Orleans, which is, 383183. And we need one more criteria. Well, you could choose a particular client ID if you wanted to research a particular client. You could select all the records for a case manager by choosing case manager ID equals a particular case manager. I often don't do that. I often use a very broad criteria. You could choose whether or not the case is open or closed, right? You could do that if you wanted to, all open cases. I often find that one of the more useful ones is to choose head of household. Since most of the time we're interested in counting households, not all family members, head of household is one of the criteria that I often use. Notice that as soon as you choose head of household, something that CAN is doing is it's identifying the data type. So if it's a number data type like an ID, it's giving you different operators. It's a really clever device. And if you choose head of household, that's actually a Boolean operator, true or false. And it's saying, well, your only possible operators here are is or is not. And in this case, we're interested in is true. So that's a really useful, clever device. I'm going to save this. And so what is this doing? I've mentioned this before in the introductory tutorial, but in this client export wizard, what you're doing basically is taking all records in region 6, diminishing them down to a smaller record set, in this case, Louisiana Hurricane Isaac. So now we're filtering our records down to only those associated with Hurricane Isaac disaster. We're filtering again, in this case, choosing only those clients in the 383183 case manager agency ID, and we want heads of household. Now, if this isn't a very useful way to understand what's going on, sometimes I like to explain that you can imagine each of these criteria as being like the fishing lures that you hang on a hook to catch particular kinds of fish. So for example, here, we're not interested in the fish that are associated with, say, the oil spill in Florida. No, we want the fish that are in or are associated with Hurricane Isaac. So we're going to put that little lure on this hook so that we get only fish attracted to or associated with Hurricane Isaac. And the same applies here. So if your case manager agency ID is 383183, only the fish that are associated with 383183 are going to grab at that hook, and you're going to get all those records. And so that might be a useful way to think about what you're doing here. Now, we're going to click the next step to get to step 5 of the client export wizard, and we're going to export our records. Here you have an opportunity to filter by some criteria. In this case, we'll choose client ID. And I'm not going to export yet because I do want to scroll down here and just review what we've done so far. I do want to save this. I want to save it as tutorial tier levels. And I may want to share this with my agency. Okay, so now I'm going to click the export button. It's going to take me to another page, and it's going to process the records on the backside. Behind the scenes, the CAN database is churning through these records and going through them and filtering them by the criteria that I've selected. When it's done doing that, it's going to build a file and post it to the web page here that I can download. The page will refresh many times. In fact, it may do this, and it may take a minute, so be patient. Just let it do its thing. Don't click backwards or forwards, just let it go. When it's done, it'll tell me when it's done. Go get yourself a cup of coffee, drink of water, maybe drink tea, sing a song. I often do this while I'm waiting. I grab this name, hit Control-C to copy, and I'll use that name when I download the file. So we've got 333 records that matched the search criteria. The file was created and compressed to a zip file. And I can either left click this or right click it to download the file. It's really my preference to right click, because sometimes browsers will send these files off into La La Land where you can't find them again, and I really like to control where they're going. So I often right click, choose Save Link As, sends me to whatever was the last folder that I saved something to. In this case, the last time I saved something in Firefox, it was to the CAN export folder. So this is great. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, but look, I've already got an FB export file out there, right? This was the previous tutorial client info. Well, this is something I don't really like about this export wizard. I wish it actually changed the name, but it's okay the way it is. So remember that I just copied the name of this template? Well, I'm just going to highlight this file name. I'm going to click Control-V, a shortcut to paste, and look, I've renamed the file. This is a really handy device. I've learned to do this through sort of trial and error, and I recommend it, strongly recommend it. Now I know where I've saved this file, right? Because I maintain this very tight hierarchy and always put things into the same structure. Here's the file that we just downloaded. It's getting late. And I actually don't need this old file, but just to show you that I do like to keep things organized, I'm actually going to rename the zip file like that. And I actually go one step further often. I often create like an archive folder, and I'll shove the zip files in there until I'm actually ready to really archive them when I shove them into a folder that has a date stamp on it. Getting a little off track, but that's just how I like to organize things. Notice that I'm going to copy this file name, although it's already on the clipboard, but I'll do that anyway. When I open this file, here's FB Export. I can drag this out, or if you have a tool like I do, you can extract the file here and it just shows up. It's just a little more efficient method, less clicking. I'm going to rename this file right away, and I'll go ahead and open it. Just here in Notepad++, I like using Notepad++. It's a really powerful text editor. You're probably not going to want to see it in this fashion, but I'm just opening it up to show you that, in fact, Notepad++ is telling me that these rows are all, or actually the columns, the fields, are delimited by a tab. That arrow is actually the symbol for a tab in in Notepad++. Here's all 383 records, or whatever the number was, 334, I guess. I should be paying closer attention. Close that because I'm not really interested in that. And what I really want to do is open this up in Excel. So I like to grab the file path string, copy it and paste it. So what I'm doing here is just highlight and hit Control C on the keyboard. I'm going to open up, whoops, that's a lot of stuff. So just get, yeah, there we go. Let's get Excel open. And I want to open up that text file. So here's where this is useful. Windows is going to send me to My Documents or somewhere, who knows where. I like to just paste that path right into that file name window. Hit enter on the keyboard, and there we go. This is the folder, right? This is where that text file is. It's not showing up because this file type drop-down box is looking for me to change the files of type parameter to text. And there it is. Tutorial tier levels, open. It's going to take me through a little wizard-driven process. You see the little square here? That square is actually a tab symbol. You can, you want to have delimited selected, not fixed width. You want delimited. The columns or the fields are separated by tabs. Just follow the wizard. It'll pretty much tell you what to do. See, like it's finding tabs, and it knows already, actually. It's sort of read the first several rows, and it knows that there are tabs there, so it thinks, aha, this record set must be delimited by tabs. So it's already dropping lines in there telling us that it knows where these records go. Click Next. It's actually defining data types here. There's almost never a reason to change these unless you get weird errors. But if you want to define something as a date type, for example, here's the date of intake, you could do that. Do that for the date of intake tab, but or column, but you probably won't do that. Just leave general. Mostly just keep the defaults and click Finish. Here's our record set. Let's select everything and just double click in between one of these or two of these columns to expand the columns so that we can read them. Here we are in Excel with our records presented to us. And what do we have in here? Well, we have the fields that we selected back there in CAN. Here's the case manager agency ID, agency name, client ID. Presumably that's sorted by client ID because that's the way we asked for the records to be delivered to us. And in fact, it looks like they are sorted by client ID, but we could just as easily do that here in Excel, which is why I don't spend a lot of time on some of those features in CAN. Here's the date of intake, the case manager ID number, the case status, whether it's open or closed, agency ID. Here, this is interesting because earlier I found an error in which actually an old agency ID was being used. So sometimes you find interesting things when you open up your criteria to more kinds of information. And there's the priority level, what we're primarily interested in. And all I'm going to do here is just finish up by showing you that you can, in fact, perform some very simple filters to get your, to sort of narrow down even further the records that you're interested in. Let's say that we're only interested in level 4 records here working in Microsoft Excel. Well, let me just click the priority level column, and I can just, here in the Home tab, here this is Microsoft Excel 2010, just choose the Sort and Filter button. You can say, for example, sort your records, and they'll sort by level 1, and all the way down here you can see level 4 records, right? So that's one way of sort of filtering your records, but I'm going to do Control Z and undo that so we're back to the original state. What else can we do? We can do an equals filter or custom sort. Let's see what custom sort does. Custom sort is really actually a very useful tool. I often use this in Excel. Let's say I want to sort by, say, priority level, tiers 1 to 4, and then say sort by date of intake might be a useful way to do things. Excuse me, let me do that again. Sort by priority level and then add a level. Then we'll sort by, what did I say? Date of intake, values, oldest to newest. My data has headers. You want that clicked so you don't move your header row down to the bottom somewhere where it just looks like it'll disappear. And say OK. So look, here's the date of intake. You'll see that it's kind of incrementing, but more importantly, here we are. We're incrementing by priority level. This may not be a logical way to sort your records. It might be more logical to sort by intake date. But you'll see that if I go down here to level 4, right here, probably the earliest level 4 intake occurred right here. And in fact, it's February 1st, 2013. So that's kind of useful. But let's not do that. I'm going to hit Control Z again to undo that change. Let's actually try to only see the level 4 records. So I'm going to go to the Data tab here. And I'm going to go here to the Sort and Filter menu. And notice that, actually, I don't want to do this yet. I don't want to show you this. I want to do a simpler sort. Let's do this. Leave that for a future tutorial. Let's see. I really just want to click filter, and it gives you an auto filter. See, this little drop down arrow shows up in all of the, at the top of all the columns right there in the header row next to the column names or the field names. This gives me an opportunity to do a variety of things. I can actually use text filters, right, to filter. So I could say, like, I don't know, begins with HIRC or something like that. But this is probably what you're going to use most of the time. Just click the Select All button to turn off these selections, and then select level 4 and choose OK. Look, automatically, just as easy as that, we've got all the level 4 records. You can continue to do that. So let's say, for example, there's some weird agencies in here, right? Let's say we really just want 383183. So I'm going to click 383183, and look, there we go. Looks like there are, I don't know, what is that? 18 records that are level 4 records. So very quickly you can get your records out of CAN, filter them, and get a quick result. Now I can clear the filter here by just going here to the drop down for the filter again and just saying clear filter, right? So pretty handy. Let me turn this off, and I think that's all I'm going to show you for now. We can do some more advanced stuff in a future tutorial, I think. So that'll conclude, I think, this second tutorial on how to use the Client Export Wizard in CAN. Thanks for your attention.